because we take this job so serious.
The f is that? Sorry, pardon me. My apologies.
What in the all types of blue hell?
This is Snowman in the Morning with Cole Johnson.
Y'all back with this, and I have a friend who, for some reason, credits my crazy ass for getting him into football. And that all started a long time ago. He's been following the free agency moves as I have. And I want y'all to help me welcome Mr. Garrick Davis.
Hey.
Now, how you doing, my friend? Great to have you.
Good. Glad to be here.
Okay. You know what the prevalent talk is, especially in our hometown of Chicago, and it surrounds one Justin Fields. Many say let him go. Many say he should stay. Let me start there with you. How do you feel about Justin Fields? Should he be let go? Should he be traded?
In a world where, I hate to give lukewarm, ambiguous answers. I'm going to say yes, we have to move on. But my heart says Justin Fields should be the answer. I understand, though, that given the way the business works, entering year 4, you got to make a decision around real money in year 5. For those reasons, you probably want to let Justin go elsewhere, and someone else pay for years 4 and 5, which I do believe are going to be productive years, and we're going to regret letting him go.
But why do you think Justin Fields has struggled so much with the Bears, especially since he became the starter?
It's just, I think it's the franchise. It's not Justin Fields. It's kind of like the equivalent of saying, why are we breaking up? It's not you, it's me. I think it's a Chicago thing. I think if Justin Fields were, I don't know, if he were in Jacksonville and say Trevor Lawrence were here, Trevor Lawrence will have had a lukewarm start to his career. And we'd be saying kind of the same things. He shows some flashes and he's talented, but the success isn't there and the consistency's never shown itself. Meanwhile, wow, that guy down in Jacksonville, Justin Fields, in my alternate universe, he's balling out. He's up and coming. It's just an organization that is more suitable to bringing along quarterbacks. He's had three coaches now, or is it?
Mm-hmm.
He's had 3 coaches. He's had as many offensive coordinators, yeah. And this is the first year that he's had any real professionals around him as a receiver core, and that's even there. It's with a piecemeal offensive line. So the fact that he even ended the year on a on the uptick, and the Bears got to 7-9, I think says a lot. And I don't know that if you bring some other young quarterback in there, that they don't suffer the same fate, because it's the organization. It's not about the talent of the quarterback. In the instance of Justin Fields.
Yeah. Man, and it's just so much surrounding the Bears right now. Of course, they hold the number 1 overall pick, and just all kinds of stuff going on. Should they draft Caleb Williams? Should they? I don't know what's going on. If they go that direction, is Caleb Williams the answer?
I gotta tell you, I hope he is, but I don't know that there's anything about Caleb Williams. Certainly not in this most recent campaign. In his Heisman year, you saw the guy that I think warrants all of the talk and the buzz that you've gotten right now. And I think
Yeah.
psychologically, Dr. Pepper commercials and Heisman House and all of that will make you believe that he's a star already. And in the commercial sense, he is. But on the field this year, you got kind of, he was okay.
Mhm.
Uh, Jaden Daniels had the most recent campaign that would make you ooh and ah, and then hearing some of the comments coming out of the combine, a lot of folks that were in Indianapolis at the combine say, Jaden Daniels is the better of the two. So I
Mhm.
hope that Caleb Williams is the guy because all indications are that's who the Bears would pick. Uh, in a perfect world for me, I just assume trade back just to number two. Washington wants Caleb Williams.
Mhm.
Uh, take Washington for some draft capital and then go get Jaden Daniels, and it's the best of both worlds for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. Trading back to get Jaden Daniels. Looking at all the free agency moves, which move or moves have surprised you the most?
Let's see here. Because some of these moves were telegraphed so well by the popular media,
Mhm.
Russell Wilson to the Steelers. Interesting, but not necessarily surprising because that move had been telegraphed by all of the pundits and the insiders for
Right,
for about
right.
a week and a half before it happened. Kirk
Mhm.
Cousins to Atlanta again. You know the pundits were all over that. It was either he was going to stay in Minnesota or he was going to go to Atlanta. Not
Yeah.
saying that they aren't uh, impactful moves and
Mhm.
significant moves, but surprising not so much. I will say Saquon Barkley to Philadelphia within the division.
Yeah.
That was kind of et tu brute. That was surprising. That was
Yeah.
surprising. I
Yeah.
thought Saquon would move. I figured maybe Dallas. I think also Dallas standing pat.
Mhm.
Surprising. The other moves that we've seen, they've all been impactful. They've been fascinating to watch. I don't know that I've seen any, fall out of bed surprises other than maybe Saquon staying in the division and going down, the turnpike to his rival. That's
Right.
gonna give us some good storylines and some good football. Derrick Henry to Baltimore, not a huge surprise because Baltimore was in the trade market for Derrick Henry last season. They didn't get to pull it off.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's heck. Just now, Calvin Ridley went to Tennessee.
Mhm.
Uh, bit of a surprise there. Folks had him staying in Jacksonville, and I kind of thought that that's what was going to happen. A little bit
Yeah.
of a
Same
a
here.
little bit of a surprise there.
Yeah, same here. I thought Calvin would stay in Jacksonville, stay as one of the big weapons for Trevor Lawrence, but now Calvin Ridley has moved on to Tennessee. Let's say in Baltimore. Baltimore grabbing Derrick Henry. We know the legend of Derrick Henry in Tennessee. He is to continue running in Baltimore. Does this mean that Dalvin Cook would be on the move?
Absolutely, absolutely. Dalvin Cook was lightly used. I forget how many weeks he was there in Baltimore. Let's call it 6 weeks at the end of the season. And
Yeah.
I was at that AFC Championship game where Baltimore inexplicably ran the ball. I think like 8 times total. You'd have thought they had no running back on the roster because and Dalvin Cook. I don't know that he got any snaps that game. So they didn't use Dalvin Cook, and now that Gus Edwards is gone, uh, I got to believe that Derrick Henry and then Keaton Mitchell is still there. You still got Justice Hill. I think those three, they're going to be carrying the rock, and Dalvin Cook would be the odd man out.
Yeah, but where would be a good place for Dalvin Cook to go?
On a 1 year deal, uh, you can name any number of places that
Hmm.
need running back production because you're going to get him. If not at the veteran minimum, it's not going to be much over that.
Right.
Uh, so to just throw something out there, quite honestly, I wasn't in love with. Well, you know what? They're not on the same par. I was going to go into DeAndre Swift, but DeAndre Swift is. I wasn't in love with that signing for Chicago, but that's not to suggest that Dalvin Cook should have been the signing.
Right.
Uh, so let's just set that aside. Someplace that's really desperate for yards on the ground, and they want to do so in a frugal way, and still maybe pick up someone in the draft. Let's say Green Bay solved their problem when they swapped out, so they're not in the market necessarily. You could pair him up with you can add him down there in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that that might be a good fit. Yeah. In terms of a competitive place that needs his services and try him out on a 1 year deal,
Hmm.
and worse for you know the salary cap where if you don't get what you want out of him, maybe Tampa.
Tampa could be a good spot for him. They're rebuilding that offense, especially after re-signing Mike Evans to an extension, so he can stay in Tampa. Baker Mayfield had a bounce back season. Looking at Tampa and how they got to the playoffs this past season, won the wild card game and got to the divisional round and lost to Detroit. How does Tampa how do the Buccaneers take that step to the next level and try to get back to a Super Bowl?
You know, uh, I'm thinking they've got to at least. I think that they're actually doing well on the offensive side of the ball. So if you can uh, add to build a more disruptive pass rush
Hmm.
uh, to keep points off the board, uh, and give their secondary a bit more of a fighting chance. That's what I'd be looking at.
Yeah.
Were I Tampa, because you re-signed Mike Evans.
Hmm.
Uh, Presumably, I don't know what their draft situation looks like off the top of my head.
Right.
But if they're not, you know, bereft of draft picks, if they've got draft picks available, well, this is a draft coming up that looks really good in terms of wide receivers. Uh, Certainly at the top of the draft, but then in the middle, rounds 2 and 3, you've got some pretty good projected wideouts as well. So I don't know that you got to pay for a wideout when you got Mike Evans.
Hmm.
Uh, I think it's who's their T1 down there. I think it's Otten, right? I think
Yeah.
is the
Kate
guy.
Otten.
Okay,
Kate Otten.
okay, yeah, and he's a ball catching tight end, and Baker Mayfield's got poise. Uh, so the idea of having a running back that takes some of the pressure off behind the ball and lets Baker process his reads uh, a little more efficiently. Not to say that he wasn't efficient this year. That
Right.
can only help things. But on the defensive side of the ball, I see that Tampa Bay at the end of the day, it wasn't their offense that failed them. It's that their defense. They let too many points.
Yeah.
Put too many points on the board against them.
Let's rewind back to the NFC playoffs, in particular the NFC Championship game. A young, hungry Detroit Lions team frightened the daylights out of the 49ers, and then the 49ers in that third quarter exploded with 17 unanswered points to tie the game, and will wound up being 27 unanswered points when they took a 10-point lead. Let's look at the Detroit side of the ledger first. getting that experience in their second ever NFC championship. The first one was 1991. How does Detroit and what does Detroit, what do the Lions need to do to take that final step and get over the hump?
That Detroit situation. I feel like Detroit should have been in the Super Bowl, and for the first half of that game, even they thought that they were already at the Super Bowl. So
Right.
that approach of playing on house money with reckless abandon, I get that got them to the NFC Championship and got them whatever it was, 27 to
20, it was 24-7 at the half.
24-7 lead.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
At that point, you gotta play conservative ball and guard the game.
Hmm.
I'm not saying drop back into a prevent defense, but
Right.
you got to stop taking these crazy gambles uh, and finish the job. So in some ways for Detroit, I don't even see it as the personnel failed them.
Hmm.
Detroit could obviously get better on the defensive side of the ball, but Detroit really is an example of, we started from the bottom, now we're here, to quote Drake. It's like they got there so quickly that
Yeah.
I think even they couldn't believe it. And there's a poise that comes with that AFC championship or NFC or AFC championship game where every snap counts and you really got to play a measured, poised game and not take big chances.
Yeah.
They had, Denny Green, they had him. They had him dead to
It
rights.
did. It did, man.
And they let him off the hook.
And I say, look, and I said the same thing on the live stream I did covering the NFC Championship. They had the 49ers dead to rights. We go to halftime, and then all of a sudden, a giant wakes up, and a giant is loose. But the play of the second half has to be that ricochet catch by Brandon Ayuk, who they're working to sign long term. Brandon Ayuk has been in essence the last 2 years the same for San Francisco with all the big plays, and then you have the case of Brock Purdy where no one still the big media pundits are still not giving him any credit, even though he set a team record for passing yards. He was third in touchdowns with 31. He was tops in QBR and passer rating, and yet they still won't give him the credit he deserves, even though he took his team to within 3 seconds of a Super Bowl win. Let's go there. Why doesn't the media at large respect or give credit to Brock Purdy? You and I have talked about this off the air. Now we're going to talk about it on the air. Why doesn't the mainstream media like or want to give credit to Brock Purdy for what he's done?
I think Brock Purdy is prisoner to the door that he came in through. And the title of Mr. Irrelevant, everyone knows that story,
Yes.
perhaps more so than they know all of the statistics that you just rattled off that speak to the talent and effectiveness of Brock Purdy. And not Brock Purdy is plug and play into a great team and anybody
Right.
could be Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
Those numbers suggest that not everyone can be Brock Purdy, and sometimes the draft gets it wrong.
Hmm.
So I get that he's Mr. Irrelevant, but Mr. Irrelevant, in the Super Bowl, in a position to win it,
Yep.
you got to drop that whole Mr. Irrelevant moniker and just go with the fact that this quarterback is in the Super Bowl with a shot to win it, and then the
Yeah.
following year, based on a 17-week season in the playoffs,
Hmm.
he's back in the position. So it's you gotta at some level let Brock Purdy stand on the merits of his accomplishments, but that's tough to do in a media market where Mr. Relevant, it's a story. It's a hell of a story. But
Yeah, it is.
if that title goes with him everywhere, well, then GMs look at him and say, okay, well, you know what? It's the team and it's not Brock Purdy, and I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, and After the NFC Championship, I saw so many reaction videos and so many reactions from the big pundits that say Brock Purdy is not him, even though he led his team back from a 17-point deficit to an NFC Championship win. And he did a lot of damage in the fourth quarter with his legs. He did a
Yeah.
lot of damage with his legs, and they showed that Brock Purdy is a dual threat quarterback when he needs to be, a la Steve Young, when George Seifert and to a point Bill Walsh got him situated. The fact that he broke Jeff Garcia's record for most passing yards in a season by a 49ers quarterback should speak volumes, but it doesn't. In fact, he's only the third quarterback in team history to throw for 4,000 yards. The other two, Jeff Garcia and Steve Young. And Steve Young's the only one to do it twice. So looking at the weapons around him, especially when they snatched Christian McCaffrey 2 years ago in a trade, and let's stay with that point. They trade for Christian McCaffrey. There was worry about his health. Since he's gotten to San Francisco, Christian McCaffrey has been nothing but durable and valuable to the 49ers.
I think that's attributable to the fact that Christian McCaffrey in San Francisco is not called upon to be the savior of the franchise in the same way that he was in Carolina. And the fact that you can't key in on Christian McCaffrey because you got to worry about, Kittle across the middle. You got to worry about Ayuk in the slot. You got to worry about Debo, and you got a poised quarterback that has grown in stature just over the calendar year and a half that we've had him on our radar, from being thrust into the game, through injury last season in Philadelphia, all the way up to the Super Bowl. I can tell you, Christmas night this year, you saw Brock Purdy peeing down his leg when Baltimore sacked him, 5 or 6 times, and they were down.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in that same situation about a month later in the NFC Championship, and he stood up and rose, and they came back and went to the Super Bowl. So Brock Purdy has gotten better just as we've watched him. But moving back over to Christian McCaffrey, I think Christian McCaffrey benefits from that. And yeah, he's the same explosive player as he was in Carolina, but to greater effect because now you can only game plan to stop Christian McCaffrey so much without losing in a different way to all of these wonderful receivers and a skilled quarterback and a defense that's only gotten better over the course of the season as well.
Hour 3 of Snowman in the Morning with my good buddy Garrick Davis, talking all things NFL, in particular NFL free agency. There were some surprising moves, but let's go to Indianapolis for a moment. They keep a key piece of their puzzle in Michael Pittman Jr. They signed him for 3 years. Gardner Minshew, a spot starter, is now gone. He's gone to Vegas. They're going to lean heavily on Anthony Richardson. And a lot of people have asked me and my wife, Jody, to grade Anthony Richardson, and both of us said the same thing. We said incomplete because he was injured for most of the season. But the weapons are there for Indianapolis, including Jonathan Taylor, although now they got to get a backup quarterback with Zach Moss gone. The weapons are there for Indy. The weapons are there for AR5. But it's just so sad that he was injured and his season couldn't be completed.
I think I'd agree with you. I think Anthony Richardson gets an incomplete. I forget when he got hurt. Was it week 5 or 6? It was really early on. And he showed in that small statistical sample early on, he showed that the goods were there. So, in some ways, you see him as a rookie, 1A this year. And you get to see what he really brings to the table there in Indianapolis. But then that brings me to the fact that if he's not durable, then you want to have a backup that is as capable as he is and in his mold. And I'm not going to go so far as to say a Justin Fields, because
Right.
that would make for a goofy quarterback room, because Justin's
Hmm.
going to want the ball and want to prove himself. So Justin Fields
Yeah.
wouldn't be a great fit there, even though in a perfect world, on a video game, sure, Justin
Yes.
Fields should be that backup.
Yes.
But
Yes.
in a world where agents and personalities and competitiveness is involved, that would be a big headache. But you better have a suitable backup to Anthony Richardson. I tell you that, to AR, because if season one, I mean, everybody gets hurt, but if
Hmm.
season one is any indication, you might need that backup to still keep your season on track.
So who would be a good backup for Indianapolis to go after and get, just in case Anthony Richardson becomes injury riddled?
Woo! Of the same kind of game, same sort of skill set, I'd have to give it some thought, because what comes to mind immediately, you know what though? Tyler Huntley is a free agent out of Baltimore, and they've not re-signed him as yet. Although
Right.
he's not left the building.
Hmm.
Jimmy Garoppolo was released, but he doesn't have the legs like Anthony Richardson does. So
Right.
it's not the same kind of quarterback. Uh, then you get into the retreads, the Taylor Heineke's of the world. He's a scrambler,
Yeah.
plucky, but he's not going to save your season. See, if he goes out again, this year could have been the aberration in this one season. But
Mhm.
if the guy goes down early, you want somebody. You don't want to be like the New York Jets this past season, where nobody can salvage the season, and
Yep.
it was a season of dreams potentially. You want
Yep.
somebody that can at least, give me. If there are 12 games left, I need somebody that's going to give me, if not 8-4, I need somebody that's going to take me 7-5, and
Absolutely.
we're still relevant.
Hmm.
And maybe the Pastronaut, he's still out there.
Yeah.
Dobbs,
Hmm.
they're out there, but you better have a good insurance policy there in Indianapolis.
Let me throw you a name, and I know this is going to be wild, but it could happen, especially now with free agency underway. What if they make a move as a backup, a move to get Desmond Ritter out of Atlanta, especially now since they signed Kirk Cousins to a 4-year deal?
I like it, but for the fact that these younger guys that were drafted high, they still believe in themselves, and that ambition can be a cancer in that type of a situation.
Right.
You know, that'd be akin to keeping Justin Fields in Chicago. I mean, you can make a case for it, but in
Hmm.
Justin Fields' mind, he's still the dude. And, he needs to, have that shot. And, it doesn't. Heck, I'm looking at Kirk Cousins. I can remember a day in time when Kirk Cousins and RG3 were drafted in the same draft. And
Yep.
ultimately, we never paid Cousins here in Washington because he was never supposed to be the dude, although he clearly was.
Yeah. Yeah. That he was. He was, man. Oh,
Had they paid him, Washington wouldn't have. You could rewrite the history of the last, I don't know,
yeah.
6, 7
They
seasons.
wouldn't be in the they wouldn't be in the mess they were in had they paid Kirk Cousins. You're
Yeah,
absolutely right
yeah.
about that.
You had him in the building.
Yep. You had the guy. You had the guy, and you let him go. He had 6 seasons in Minnesota. Now he's going to have 4 more in Atlanta, provided that he stays healthy. Talking all kinds of NFL free agency moves with my buddy Garrick Davis, an NFL correspondent, and take me back to that AFC Championship game. You were there at M&T Bank Stadium. How loud was that place? Because you've been there a few times. How loud is M&T Bank Stadium?
Yeah, my wife was from Baltimore, so in the words of Samuel Jackson in Pulp Fiction, my lady's a vegetarian, so that pretty much makes me a vegetarian. Uh, so yeah, I spend a lot of time at M&T. Uh, it was surreal. It was loud and it was electric until the uncertainty set in. And the
Yeah.
uncertainty set in early
Hmm.
because we couldn't get in front of these guys in a way that, we had all through the season. And Kansas City never quite ran away in the beginning. Travis Kelce in the first half,
Hmm.
was really the bane of our existence. But that second half, the defense, they didn't let them score, but we couldn't put anything together. And it got really quiet. That hush that falls over a
Yeah.
stadium when you know what's coming, and it hasn't come yet, but you know what's coming.
Right.
Uh, it's kind of like the Cubs in Game 7 after Steve Bartman. They had a whole other
Yeah.
game to play.
Yeah.
That was Game 6 when that whole thing went down. But Game 7, everybody just knew, okay, we're walking in here to lose tonight.
Hmm.
And it kind of felt that way in the second half of that game. We couldn't find a touchdown to get it over the top. So it was not loud for the second half of that game, but for moans and groans and
Hmm.
and, and, and disappointment.
Yeah. How do the Ravens, and we'll close with this, how do the Ravens bounce back from that loss in the AFC Championship game and get back there and for them to get over the hump and get to the Super Bowl?
It's difficult because now the Ravens, uh, it's a good problem to have, but they're now in that place where, for the most part, everybody's looking to December and January.
Hmm.
The Ravens have proven that they belong, and I call that AFC North. I call it a bad neighborhood because any one of those four teams can get you. You're
Yeah.
you're you're living in a bad neighborhood if you're in the AFC North. You got mean defenses and you got superstar quarterbacks. So none of these teams are lightweights. But having said all that, the Ravens, barring injury, and that's a big if. You got to stay
Yeah.
healthy. You got
Yeah.
to get to the playoffs,
Hmm.
and then that's where you really got to prove yourself. And I don't know that. Yeah, they're gonna there's gonna be a change in the lineup. Patrick Queen went to Pittsburgh.
Hmm.
Uh, you Gus Edwards is gone, but you backfilled him with Derrick Henry and improved.
Yeah.
Uh, Clowney had 9.5 sacks this year, but he's visiting the Panthers, I think, today
Yeah.
or tomorrow.
Yeah.
So he's pretty much gone. Uh, so there's going to be some retooling, but having said all that, I think the Ravens are in a great position, but for the fact that the deck was cleared for them this past year. I mean,
Hmm.
Watson was down, Burrow was down early. Pittsburgh had, a clown car for, quarterback, and they
Yeah.
still made it to the play. All three teams still made it to the playoffs. So it's going to be a lot tougher for them to get there. But, really it's consistency and staying healthy for them.
Let's go to Pittsburgh really quick before we go to a break. Russell Wilson signs a 1-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Talk to me about that move. How do you feel about that? And how do you feel about the Steelers quarterback room so far?
You get better quarterback play out of Pittsburgh than you've had since, Roethlisberger's last meaningful years.
Hmm.
On the other hand, I don't know. It'd be fascinating to watch. I don't know how much of a difference that makes. Again, in that bad neighborhood that I just talked about,
Yeah.
because you got now Russell Wilson. Forget about the quarterbacks. Think about the fact that now Russell Wilson is going to have to contend with Miles Garrett. Miles Garrett sitting on him,
Hmm.
4 or 5 times in a year, and a couple hurries and a couple hits from Miles Garrett and company.
Hmm.
He's going to be dealing with Roquan Smith and Justin Matabike. They're going to lay him on his back,
Yep.
10 times over 2 games.
Hmm.
Uh, he's got to deal with he's dealing with some nasty defenses. And
That he is.
Arthur Smith, his uh his play style is to have QBs throw it across the middle, and Russell Wilson doesn't do that. Russell Wilson, Russell pushes the ball downfield, and the whole idea of letting him cook 5-6 years ago, sure, but he's not going to be scrambling around so much with those defenses that I just named off to you. They're going to keep him more or less contained, for his own safety. He would want to. So, it looks good on paper. And Mike Tomlin, if anyone was going to get more out of less than what they have, I mean, he managed to get this dumpster fire to 9-7 this year.
Yeah,
he can turn water into wine. So I'll never say never, because with Russell Wilson, maybe Mike Tomlin gets you 10 wins. It's entirely possible. I wouldn't bet against it. Yet at the same time, I don't know that Russell comes here and just balls out and ends up, Pittsburgh champs of the AFC North. I wouldn't put my money on that. If it's Pittsburgh versus the AFC North field, give me the AFC North field.
absolutely. Garrick Davis joining us, talking free agency moves and talking NFL, here to kick off hour number 3 of Snowman in the Morning. And man, I got to tell you something. Whenever you and I get together and we talk sports, it is always a fun conversation. I want to thank you for coming aboard, my man. I appreciate it.
This has been fun. And pro bettors tip: anything that I said, put all your chips against it in the opposite direction, and you'll be filthy rich come next January.
I gotta have you as one of my guest pickers this year when we do our picks. When we do our picks during the season, I gotta have you as one of my guest pickers, man. I mean it. I mean it. And I appreciate you.
In fact, I think I just crowned Pittsburgh as champs of the AFC North. It'll probably happen now.
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate you coming aboard.
All right, thank you, Snowman.
Oh, you gotta love it. You gotta love it. My buddy Garrick Davis coming on, talking all kinds of football. Hour 3 is underway. Let's pause for a break, and when y'all get back, I'll have the crew back here, and we'll take you through the rest of the show. Snowman in the Morning, back in a flash.
'Cause we take this job so serious.
The is that? Sorry, pardon me. My apologies.
What in the all types of blue hell?
This is Snowman in the Morning with Cole Johnson.